Billy, when you started getting involved in this, what were some of the first things that you saw that made you realize, man, this isn't all that it's supposed to be? This is different. There's cover-ups. There's things hidden.
Yeah. The first thing that I saw was in the presidential panorama, which is actually hosted by Arizona.edu, that particular image, I guess because one of the professors there was the lead on the rover mission. But the first I saw was a sphinx, a pyramid, and actually two pyramids in the background, a sphinx, and two pieces of what looked like technology on the surface of Mars. And it's one of the most amazing, clearest day evidences that I've ever seen. It was the very first thing that I ever saw, and I was like, this is crazy. I mean, how could this possibly be? So I started researching more about similarities between Earth and Mars and found that in Avebury, UK, there's an area there where Stonehenge is located that mirrors identically, if you take an ordnance map, it mirrors identically down to the millimeter a place on Mars called Cydonia, where the face on Mars is located. So there's many correlations like that occur, and it just has you scratching your head going, what in the world is going on here?
Yeah, well, and there's lots going on all over the place. Tell me your thoughts on God. How does that tie into this?
Yes. Well, that's a very good question, and a lot of people ask me, do I believe in God? Do I believe in God? I believe that there is a creator, and I think based on my study of quantum physics, the quantum physics, all quantum physicists and theoretical physicists will tell you that there is a creator. The evidence of the creator is in the fingerprint. And what is the fingerprint? The Fibonacci sequence, phi, the Mandelbrot formula. These are all evidences. In other words, if I was a CSA agent for the universe looking to see who created this universe, I would have to go by evidence. And the evidence that I would find would be these particular mathematical codes and also binary code as well. This would be a signature of the creator itself, somebody who, or somebody or entities that created this universe. Now, I believe that within this creation, there's something called the collective consciousness or the universal consciousness that we all are tied and tapped into and connected directly to this source energy field. And I believe that that is what most people actually, without even knowing about it, are considering or calling God. Now, the creator on the outside of this dimension could be a group of entity or entities that have actually created this thing, but the universal consciousness, to me, is as close as you can get to a God. I don't believe that there's a sky daddy out there with a magic wand waving it and making things happen. It's almost as if this is a pebble dropped into a river and the ripples have gone out, and things are just going along, along this ripple on this time span that we're on, and just playing themselves out in a certain way. And people who have the capability of tapping into that universal consciousness and law of attraction seem to have a little bit of a better path or create their own reality tunnel a little bit better through this third dimension than some others. And some of us, I believe, really truly are sent here to help, because when you really look at the physics of it, your spirit being, your light being that inhabits this avatar body appears to be being transmitted into this dimension from another source. And the reason why I say that is because science has already proven through an actual experiment that they did, putting people in a dark room, putting pictures on the screen, and putting sensors on the head, discovering that the human brain is detecting the next picture up to 7 seconds before it shows up on the screen. So what does that tell you? There's a delay factor here in between the information being actually done and then the time that the body receives it. So there's a lot of, Einstein used to call it spooky action at a distance. There's a lot of things going on with quantum entanglement, Heisenberg uncertainty principles. There's a lot of things in physics that are going on that's telling me that this universe is created. The universal consciousness, the collective consciousness, to me, is what I consider to be God. And there is ultimately a creator of the actual universe itself.
And let me ask you this, too. When you look at all this that you've been covering over the years, what do you think about these theories that there are underground creatures, maybe not ETs, but just maybe part of Earth, that are wandering all over the place, intelligent creatures?
Yes, absolutely. I truly believe that there are these pre-Adamite humanoids that are still living in the inner Earth currently. There seems to be many stories in ancient times, even everything from the Terra Papers to the Sumerian tablets to the Mahabharata. They all talk about these inner earth people, and some people tend to think that the earth is completely hollow and there's a central sun. I don't tend to believe that, but I do tend to believe that there is a honeycomb structure underneath the earth, that these gigantic city-sized caverns open up and go on for miles and miles and miles, because I've actually been inside of one when I went to Cacahuamilpa in Teotihuacan, Mexico. We took actually a 3-hour ride up to Tula, and went up into this mountain, and we went down 2 kilometers, and we could have kept going. So I think that there's these super massive honeycomb-type structures underneath the earth, and in there, I believe that there's still, right now, living terrestrial beings, the
intelligent ones, right?
Intelligent, very intelligent. They were human beings on the surface in the Midwest were saved by these beings. They were brought underneath during a catastrophe, and the native indigenous people recorded this in their cliff paintings, in their verbal history. So they do exist. And then, of course, there's been scientists and geologists like Phil Schneider, who, working for the U.S. government, opened up a cavern deep underground while building a base, and actually went to a particular area where there were these beings down there that he said they were aliens, according to what he perceived them as. And a gunfight broke out, and part of his hand was like sliced off with this laser, and part of his body was gutted open. Eventually, he died from suffocation, quote unquote, suicide. But after he came out with this information, but that was a very bizarre case and a very bizarre whistleblower.
All right, to the phones now we go. Cornelius is with us in Louisiana. Hello there, sir.
Hello, George.
Hi there.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, boy, I tell you, call me something else. I tell everybody, Billy, I'm the God, Guns, and Gold man, the Bible, Bullets, and Beans man. And George asked you a good question about God. I see that you do believe. But have you looked at the Bible to see where your stuff matches up? Because, see, I believe these aliens are really angels that take physical form. You can read all that stuff in the Bible. And I wanted to ask you one more thing, George.
Okay.
Please pray for Steve Scalise. I'm going to become a Republican now, and we all need to stand behind the Republicans and Trump. This is wrong what they're doing, and just pray for Steve and his family and stuff, and pray for the country.
Oh, absolutely. But don't blame everyone who may be Democratic on the work of one crazy person. Also, Cornelius, don't forget. I mean, this party system, this two-party system, primarily two parties, is healthy. This is a sick guy. Don't let him taint everything that has been going on. But go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I mean, I have gone into the biblical text extremely, extremely deep. Now, one thing that I've noticed from the biblical text is that a lot of it comes from the ancient Sumerian tablets. The ancient Sumerian tablets, which actually predate the Bible, give you a bigger and fuller story, and the Bible verses give you a much smaller story of what really happened. So, I'll give you a quick example. The Epic of Gilgamesh turns into, the Noah's flood in the Bible. But when you go into the Epic of Gilgamesh, you get a lot more content, a lot more information, and these kind of correlations occur where even the words of Jesus speaking in the New Testament of the Bible, you can find his teachings in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which date back over 36,000 years. So I've done the correlations, I've done the heavy, heavy research, and I've come to find out that the writers of the Bible, these Pleiadians people that wrote the Bible, were big followers of Hermes, which actually was Thoth the Atlantean, and a lot of the stories are smaller parts of what was already written in stone many thousands of years before. Some people tend to think, like yourself, that some of these people are angels that have taken human form, and there's nothing wrong with that because none of us can be 100% accurate, but I just personally believe that these are just real flesh and blood people. I've seen some of the archaeological evidence. I've read the stories where these beings and entities appear to be portraying themselves as something that they may not be, just because they have a slight bit of advanced technology and a little bit more higher IQ than humans. I think in a lot of the ways, they took advantage of people They made it with us. They took us. They enslaved us. They made us do a lot of things that I just don't think all-knowing and loving type of entities would do to another species. And especially if you read the book of Deuteronomy, you find out that these everywhere where God is giving these orders to kill and actually use the word rape and steal and so forth, I don't think that's God talking. I really believe that that's the Anunnaki relatives fighting each other and using human beings as cattle to win these wars, kind of like what they do right now in modern times.
Text and tweets. Tom, what do you have for Billy Carson?
We have a text from Mandy in South Dakota. She says, if I understand you right and the collective consciousness is God, then where does the consciousness of those who are evil fit in, since God is good and love?
That's a fantastic question, Mandy, and I'm glad you asked that question. You see, one thing you have to understand is there's always a yin and a yang, a good and a bad, dark and a light, and that permeates the entire universe. That is part of the natural balance and flow of things. If you read the Bible, God himself says that he's a jealous God. That's a part of darkness. He talks about, he actually makes a statement in the Bible where he says he does both good and evil. So there's a lot of, you got to really look into a lot of the text and what it really says. And that's really going into the whole yin and yang and good and bad and everything that he says he created. Some are good and some is bad, and it all comes out of him, and we're out of him. And so God is, or it may not even be him, it could be a her. I mean, the universe's energy is more feminine, in my personal opinion, just looking at the flower of life. But the essence itself of the creation is inside of us because our avatars are made from the creation. Our spirit is emanating from this creation. So we are God, and God is us. So, and we're both good and we're both bad. So I think that it permeates the entire universe.
Indeed it does. Billy Carson, our special guest this hour, and we're talking about his work in the field of ufology as well. Where does this field end up in the next 5 years, Billy, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I believe this is going to end up being taught in schools. Astroarchaeology and astroanthropology are going to be two new fields of science. And I really truly believe that we're helping to pioneer these fields. We may not be at the forefront of it when it finally really does launch, but we're the ones in the very, very beginning stages, and I think a lot of people are going to look back on a lot of the work that we've done and go, wow, this is where it kind of really all started. And I really do truly believe that it's destined to be taught as an actual science.
Frank in Hollywood, Maryland's with us now. Welcome to the program, Frank.
Howdy, George. Glad to be back with you.
Thank you, sir.
Never cease to amaze me. Mr. Carson, you're one of the people that on a long flight to Australia, I'd want you sitting right next to me on the long flight. My
Thank
question
you.
is, this may sound like a dumb question. These alien beings that some people seem to see, they don't seem to have any enhanced breathing apparatus. Now, if they come here and breathe our air, is it plausible that we could go to wherever they came from and breathe their air without enhanced breathing apparatus like a spacesuit?
Yeah, man, that's a fantastic question. I mean, you're the first person that actually brought up that question, and it's a fantastic question. When you read the Sumerian tablets, you discover that Alalu was one of the first to land here, who came from Nibiru or wherever his home planet might have been. But when he landed, he used this thing called the Tablets of Destiny and a reader and scanner to scan the atmosphere to see if it was breathable, to see if it had enough organic gases that he can actually breathe before he took his mask off. And after the testing, he was able to take his mask off. Now, these beings were giants, and that's been proven already just in the record, archaeological record. But their planet must have been much bigger than this planet, and probably 4 to 5 times larger than this planet. Now, if we went to their planet, if their planet had the same exact, and not exact, but as long as it has, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, krypton, a few of these basic gases, helium, we can breathe. Now, in some cases, it may be harder to get oxygen to the muscles depending on the levels. But I'll tell you something that's very interesting. Mercury, where people don't realize Mercury is not this scalding hot ball of fire. Mercury takes 59 days or so to spin on its own axis. So most of the planet is never in direct sunlight. And when the Mercury Messenger mission went to Mercury, guess what they discovered? 49% oxygen, argon gases, helium, carbon, everything you would need. Actually, more oxygen in the atmosphere than we have on Earth. Earth has about 22% oxygen. They have 49% oxygen, and billions of tons of ice and water on the planet Mercury. This is from the more recent NASA Messenger mission. You can get all this information on NASA.gov. That tells me that possibly we might be able to land on Mercury and pop open your space helmet and take a deep breath. So this is really amazing science that has come from this mission, and proves to me that as long as those basic gases are in the air, there's a very good possibility that you may have an adjustment period, but that you'd be able to breathe.
All right, let's take another question, then a break, then we'll come back for more. We go to Marianne in Buffalo, New York. Hi, Marianne. Go ahead.
Hi, hello.
Hi there.
Okay, I believe in the Holy Bible. I believe God. I believe Jesus is the Son of God and our Savior. And I also believe, because Jesus spoke of ghosts or spirits, and Job, and there's other people in the Bible that spoke about that, I've actually seen ghosts. And I have a question after this. I've seen I've had an experience where at my job site, I was working in a men's clothing room, and I went out to get a coffee, came back. Now I know the only thing I did was close the door. I didn't turn the light off. When I came in with the coffee, I opened up the door, the light's off. And I see this short, little, gray-haired black lady, and I go to turn the light on, because I know I didn't shut it off, but I go to turn the light on to ask her what she's doing in the dark, and as soon as I did that, she disappeared, went and told my coworkers what had happened, and, not to upset in case any relatives of hers are listening, I'm going to make up her name and say it's Sue. I'll go to I went to my coworkers and said, "Oh, guess what just happened to me?" And I told them, and everybody, there was about 5 people there. "Oh, you must have seen Sue."
That's amazing. Hey, stay with us, Marianne. We're going to come back and get your question. Okay, welcome back. Billy Carson, our final segment here, and your calls as we talk about ETs and ET cover-ups. Who's responsible, Billy, do you think, for the cover-ups? Who's in charge? I don't think it's a president. I don't think they know anything.
No, I don't think they know much of anything at all. They're just puppets, in my opinion. They're just following orders, and they're given an opportunity to enrich themselves in return. The true people that are really behind this, I truly still believe, are some of the Anunnaki, the bloodline of them at least, that is still here on this planet. One of the things that I've been able to track in my research is that these Anunnaki that interacted with the Sumerians, and a Sumerian Kings list, which is it's on display at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England. That bloodline started the Pharaonic bloodline after the Great Flood, and then from there, after the last Pyramid War, they started migrating through Arabia and up into Europe, where they actually became kings and queens and started the whole kingdom of the European age. And then from there, John Laxton's line, the Plantagenet bloodline, for whatever reason, was chosen, and that bloodline is related to every single president with the exception of Van Buren, including Obama is related. They're all related by blood, and this is easily trackable through Jenny.com or Ancestry.com. A 9-year-old girl that actually did it several years ago as a middle school project, and she made international news with it. Even Donald Trump is directly related as well. And Hillary Clinton was also related. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are cousins. So this is really a bizarre situation where you see the same bloodline, but who's behind the scenes controlling things? You have the administrators or the custodians, which would be the Rothschild and Rockefeller figures, their family bloodline.
The Illuminati, the big ones.
The Illuminati bloodline. There's several other, secret societies, and sometimes they battle each other, but they're all looking for more power and control. But when you go into the ancient text and you look at the Terra papers, you find that Amun-Ra, or Marduk, who was Thoth's brother, was having a battle with everybody because he was trying to take over the kingship too early, and he was ruling brutally and so forth. And in that last war, he almost lost it. He almost barely escaped with his life. But before he left to rule from space, he says, he gave the kingship and the funding and everything over to the kingdom's money and everything over to his Rakam, which means offspring of. When you translate the word Kam, K-A-M, into modern terms, it's the word shield. So he left the kingship and the money and everything in control of the planet Earth over to the Rothschilds, which is the Rothschilds. You transfer it. You can see where it began so long ago, and now has, I think it's still under the same control because they're worth $700 trillion, their family. And they literally control virtually almost every country on this planet with the exception of 3 that don't have the centralized bank yet. So behind the scenes, they have funded every war on both sides, including the World War I, World War II, even the Civil War was funded on both sides by these people. It's just amazing that they're still behind the scenes pulling all the strings like puppet masters after all these hundreds of years.
Let's go back to Marianne now in Buffalo, New York, for her question, or let's let you finish up your story, Marianne, and then go to your question.
Yes, I was explaining about this quote unquote Sue. All my coworkers, when I described her, they all in unison said, "Oh, you must have seen Sue." Well, that was a ghost or a spirit, if you will, and I've seen my birth dad in the same manner in my hallway in front of my son's bedroom door about 3 weeks after he died. And then about 10, 15 years ago, I saw this creature on the creek bank right here in Buffalo, New York. He had like a dog face, hairy chest, arms, and then from the waist down, he had like camel-like legs. And there's no way a human leg could fit in something like that because their legs are different.
Yeah.
And then, believing in the Bible, you cannot limit God. You cannot limit what he created. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, because many pictures that I've literally taken, what do you call them? No, not microscope, but, anyways, I've studied these pictures of the planets that NASA and maybe some other people have taken, and I've studied them. There's a couple planets, and I can't recall the names of the planets off the hand at the moment, but I've seen what I recall like little cities. They're like little buildings, and the nearest thing I can think of is the Navajo.
Well, that would be Mars and the moon, would it not, Billy?
Yeah, most likely. There's Navajo-type anomalies on both the moon and Mars. There's actually a place on Mars that resembles an Inca city on Earth, Machu Picchu, and we actually call it, NASA has actually labeled that area the Inca City, which is, amazing and astounding. So there's stones that we found in megalithic structures on Earth that appear to match stones and structures that we've discovered on the moon and also on Mars. So these little cities are kind of like what I was talking about earlier in the show, are definitely there. Whatever you saw, I'm telling you, it's definitely there. And like you say, you can't limit creation. This universe wants to create. You call it God, I may call it the universe. I think we're all really talking about the same entity of creation itself. And I think creation is abound, and it just continues to come forth out of the ether. And there's also multiple dimensions. So in M theory and string theory, you discover that everything operates off of frequency and vibration. But vibrationally, this third-dimensional universe that we're in can't sustain itself unless there's dimensions above it. So they figured that there's actually a total of 11 dimensions, all within Planck seconds of each other in 90-degree angles. So they're right on top of each other. And there may be actual complete civilizations living in each one of these dimensions that could have totally different laws of physics. And imagine if you're an entity in the fifth dimension, but you have developed the technology to phase shift change your atomic structure or your vibration to enter into a lower or higher dimension. You can get people coming from the fourth and fifth dimension into the third dimension where we are, but we don't have that technology right now, so we can't go up into their levels. So there's a lot of different things that can happen. There's a lot of ways that these types of things can happen, but unfortunately, we don't have all the answers. We're always looking, but it's great to think about them.
Let's go to Ian in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hello, Ian. Good morning.
Hi. Good morning, George.
Hi.
Nice to talk to you both.
Thank you, sir.
I had two questions regarding testimonies that I've seen online on YouTube.
Okay.
One was of a man named William Tompkins. He worked for aviation companies for the Navy, and his basic speech, what he talked about, were definitely aliens being a part of Earth, and maybe even part of Antarctica, I think he was talking about. And also a man named Dr. Bergen, who is a NASA scientist, which took the pictures of the rings on Saturn, basically explaining that they see these anomalies of like these huge ship-looking things that are in the rings of Saturn. And he has this theory that these rings build whenever these strong entities work on Earth, however they do. And also I wanted to ask, because you were regarding about the Rothschilds earlier. See, I come from Pittsburgh, and what I've learned recently that Pittsburgh is the spiritual hub of the Illuminati. Has something to do with George Washington. And,
I didn't know that.
Part of Point Park, or on the rivers. And what I wanted to say was that I watched an interview of another man, a Dutch banker named Ronald Bernard, and he was explaining how he was with these elite Illuminati, and these people were doing these Luciferian ceremonies.
Oh, they do all kinds of things like that. They really do. Have you heard of William Tompkins or Dr. Bergman at all?
Yes, absolutely. William Tompkins is actually a very credible whistleblower. He designed a lot of the fleet that was used in the fleet ordered by Ronald Reagan in the 1980s for solar warden. He was one of the designers for some of that fleet of ships that actually does exist. There was a gentleman by the name of McKinney who actually hacked into the NASA servers in the early 2000s.
That's
and was
right.
Caught after 2 years, and they wanted to extradite him to the United States to face.
He's still in England, isn't he?
He's still in England. Yeah, they kept him. They actually they actually stopped or prevented the extradition of him and kept him there. And the reason being is because if he would have gone to trial, then all of the question marks would have popped up. All the evidence would have to have been presented. People would have been asking a lot of questions, and so forth and so on. So it would have really exposed a lot more than what they wanted. So they kind of had to let it die out.
Tom, you've got a text or tweet. Go ahead.
This is a text from Gabriel in Idaho. Please ask Billy why he thinks some people are so reluctant to believe and accept that life on another planet exists, and can we progress to start to change their minds?
Well, some people will always believe that. Billy, you've got a minute left. Go ahead.
Okay. I think that a lot of people have been just from the time you're born, you're given a name, you're told what race you are, you're given a religion, and you spend the rest of your life defending a false identity. And I think that it becomes kind of ingrained in you, and a lot of people don't have a way of breaking out of that. I call that even a matrix in itself. I think that over time, though, we have made a lot of ground teaching people and bringing information to people to show them that there is something above us. There is something out there more than just us. We are not the center of the universe, and I believe that over more time, people will begin to wake up.
Billy, spell out your website for us.
4, the number 4, BIDDENKNOWLEDGE.com.
You got it.
Knowledge.com.
Thank you, Billy. And Billy, of course, can be seen on the Beyond Belief show by going to beyondbelief.com. Really appreciate it.